Hello and welcome back to this podcast, Life, Loss and Legacy from Planning Solo. And we'll hop straight in because the topic of this episode is one that I'm really excited about. It's about building financial confidence after loss. And I'm realizing there's a bit of a cognitive shock there talking about excitement around such a heavy topic. But one of the reasons I'm excited is because I'm joined today by a very special guest, Kearsten James of Addy House.
Hi.
Is it
Thanks,
Kearsten
Jordan.
or Kirsten?
It's Kearsten. You did
It is
amazing. I
Kearsten.
was so proud of you.
I've said it, oh God, it's wrong.
With a lifetime of my name being spelt this way, I'm used to anything that starts with K, but you nailed it. Kearsten, perfect.
I'll take that again because, okay, good. Don't doubt yourself, Jordan. Just keep going. There is a bit of cognitive dissonance between being excited about such a heavy topic, but one of the reasons I'm excited today is because I'm joined by a very special guest, Kearsten James of Addy House. Now, Kearsten has been in the financial planning profession in various roles for 20 years. Her passion is to simplify the complex financial world and provide her clients with the clarity they need to make informed decisions about their financial future. She's dedicated to empowering successful professionals to make the right financial decisions for themselves and their families, whether they are planning for retirement, managing their investments, or, as we will discuss today, navigating complex financial situations. Kearsten has a strong desire to give back to her profession, so she spent 3 years on the board of directors for our largest financial planning member association, the FAAA, and being very driven to ensure her clients' needs always come first, she established Addy House in 2021 with her own independent AFSL, which is fantastic, and she sees herself as a champion for her clients where their money and life intersect. Kearsten, thank you so much for joining me today.
Jordan, thank you so much for inviting me on the podcast. Looking forward to it.
It's always nice to talk with another independent advisor. It's not
I
just
know.
me.
That's why we get along so well. Like-minded.
For the 3 people that are listening to this that know what independence is, thank you. For the rest of everybody else, it means essentially no commissions. We are purely paid for the advice that we give, which is quite unique in the advisory market. So we're both very proud of that.
Yeah. Our clients have the absolute certainty that we're working in their best interests with no other conflicts.
Yeah, it just shouldn't be as rare as it is, but it is, and we're both very proud of it. So one of the reasons I've asked Kearsten is not just to wax lyrical about the value of independence, but also to talk about these next steps for people as they're building financial confidence after losing their partner. It's such a big change, and the whole point of this entire series is to help people navigate those first few years coming out of such a loss. So really today we're going to be working across 3 main areas. The first one is just exploring the uncertainty that comes for people that are all of a sudden responsible for their own finances. It's a really big shift, it's a huge transition, and it comes with a lot of emotional baggage. The second area we'll talk about is what does financial confidence actually look like? I think for us as advisors, we have a very clear picture of what it can look like. So we want to explore that a little bit and talk a little bit about what those confident people that we have in our lives actually have in their financial picture. And then the steps people can take to build that financial confidence with a lot of intention and clarity. So they're the 3 main areas we're going to cover. But Kearsten, I'll ask you one quick question before we kick off properly. How do you find that kind of really big transition that widows primarily are going through after such a big loss?
It's a very, very emotional time and for quite a long time as well, I find. I remember it was actually my very first client that I ever had was a widow, and she was in her 80s and she'd lost her husband. He was the money manager in their relationship. And so when she came to me, she actually had absolutely no idea what assets she had, no knowledge of how much money she had, no idea where anything was. And so I just gave her the task of finding breadcrumbs. And so go home, get a box, put lots of documents in it, any paperwork you can find. And we had to build a picture for her of what her life looked like, what she owed, what she owned, what income sources she had. And it was actually a really eye-opening experience for me, as I was a very young advisor at the time, to see just how big an impact there was on this woman in the uncertainty of not knowing her current position. Because the meeting I had with her, where I just laid out what she had, she just immediately started crying and broke down with this relief of actually finally knowing her position. So I think that's one of the biggest things that happens for a lot of widows, is this really lack of certainty around where they are. What are they left with? What insurances are there? What's the position now? Where do they go next?
And I think we're definitely going to come back to that particular case because it's so archetypal of the things that we see for people, whatever age it happens. But if you haven't been the money manager and all of a sudden you are, just trying to find the assets. I mean, I would wager that process of chasing those breadcrumbs helped her become a little bit more confident through that process. I mean, as much as you can at that stage of life.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that
absolutely.
makes that putting a bit of work back onto people and that collaboration can make a really big difference for people. So let's hop into that first area, that uncertainty that comes with all of a sudden being responsible. And I think in conceiving this podcast, the idea was that it's for people that haven't managed money before, are really nervous about money, and they're now all of a sudden being responsible for making all these really big decisions. So to your example of that person then, what kind of decisions are they all of a sudden having to make in your experience when they've lost their partner?
Oh, in those first few years, and this is what's so tragic, is that they are being forced to make so many decisions so quickly in a period of time when there is already so much grief and anxiety. And that's not at all a great place to be making big financial decisions or life changes. But unfortunately, in a lot of cases, with a lot of their position, that they actually have to make decisions quickly. So things like superannuation, you can't actually leave a death benefit in super for too long. So you have to decide whether you're going to take it as a lump sum or as a pension payment. There are some things that you just can't delay on, or you find yourself with an insurance payment that's come out and you've got all of this cash and you need to decide, okay, is it staying in a bank account? Am I investing it? Is it paying off debt? What debts do I have?
That's a bigger question than it should be a lot of the time.
Yeah. And then, and there's other questions that often come is, you're in the family home where you've had so many memories. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for that individual? And are they comfortable staying there, or do they feel the need to leave? So, yeah, a lot of upheaval and a lot of decision making at a time which is just not ideal for the rational mind.
Yes, you're already, and if you've lost them suddenly, or if it's been the result of a prolonged illness, all of these decisions are tied up with emotional strands. We have somebody that we were helping recently that had a holiday house, and it was not her sort of preferred place. It was really his place. He loved it. But the idea of selling it really clashed with that emotional tie-up and memory that she had. So essentially our advice was, well, then don't sell it. Hold on to it for 12 months. It's going to cost you X, but just revisit it along the way and use it as don't see it as a financial asset. I think that's a mistake some advisors sometimes make, is that everything's a financial decision. Whereas I know in your work as well, there's an emotional overlay to everything. Money is just the tool, the mechanism we use to build the life that we want.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important that people work to their own pace to some extent. That superannuation payout's not going to wait for anyone.
No, 100%. I think it's really important to have the conversations with our clients around their preferences and what are their values and what's important to them, because money is for living. It's not about who dies with the most wins. It's around making sure that the clients have the money that they need for the life that they want. And so not every decision is a financial decision. We have to actually understand the emotional baggage that comes with a lot of the decisions as well.
And I think obviously we have the divorce side of my practice, that we have one at the moment where one of the main issues that's sort of dissolved their relationship is the way that their relationship with money. And speaking with him, it's clear that his father has brought a lot of damage through to his relationship with money. So it's that intergenerational side as well. So I think when you're speaking to an advisor, I think it's important that they are cognizant of some of these other emotional aspects. I've made a note here of some of the things that people have mentioned to us in the work. There's worries, of course, there's the uncertainty, we'll talk about that. But a really big one is embarrassment about not knowing where the money is and how it's structured. Oh, I should know this. This is something that, I feel bad I don't know about. How do you manage that kind of reaction when it comes to conversations about money with people that are all of a sudden kind of managing it on their own?
Well, it's kind of well, not at all. This is nothing to be embarrassed about. It is so common in most relationships that there is one person in the relationship that takes the money management role. Just the same way as there's usually one person that mows the lawns and one person that takes the kids to school. That's everyone has a different role in the relationship, and so it shouldn't be something that they feel embarrassed about. It's okay, here's a problem, let's fix it.
We're mowing the lawn and everything else.
But it's the same. Like, I mean, we're financial planners, so it is normal for us to feel very confident about all things money and tax and super and insurance. Whereas, your client might be an anaesthetist, and their role in life is to understand, the medications and how that works. And I wouldn't have a clue about anything medicine related, but I also wouldn't go to an anaesthetist feeling bad that I don't know anything about their role. So clients shouldn't feel, I understand why they do, but they shouldn't have to feel like they should know more or embarrassed that they don't. In my mind, there are no dumb questions.
And I think we will speak a little bit later about kind of the onus on us as professionals to make sure that doesn't happen. Because I think a lot, too much, about the walk that clients take from their car to our door. Like, that would be very nerve-wracking, particularly in the instances that we're talking about. So I think there is work, and we'll wrap up today's with questions you can ask an advisor to try to find the right one to work with, because I think that's a really key point, because not every advisor is not for every person, broadly speaking. Another emotional reaction I've had people talk to me about in this sort of haze of uncertainty is sometimes they're really scared of being taken advantage of by advisors or by other professionals in their life. That's a really hard emotion, I think, to navigate around as a professional, asking somebody to trust us. Is there a way that you think people...
That is, we don't want our clients to trust us. So so it sounds strange, but we believe it's our role to put our clients in a position of being able to make a good decision for themselves. So we believe in educating our clients to the extent that they understand everything we're suggesting they do. Like, when we make a recommendation, we're here as a guide. We're not their mother. And that we're not going to tell them what they have to do. But here's what my advice is. Here's why I think it's right for you. Here's all the risks and things that you should think about in doing this. And they should feel like they understand the advice and that they're willing to take it. I don't want clients to trust me. I want them to know what they're doing and them feel good about the decisions that they're making.
So I think that's a really... I don't know how to say, but a really evolved perspective compared to some of the stories I hear from clients about the advisors they've inherited. So the advisor may have been a really good fit for their partner, but not a good fit for them. There is a lot of that. Trust me, I'll be here. Just do what I say, darl, kind of thing. It still happens. Makes your skin crawl.
A little pat on the head. You're like, ugh.
Yeah. Here's this portfolio report with 37 different shares on it. It's okay. It's what he would have wanted. Just keep it going.
Yep.
But you're flipping that around, saying that, to paraphrase, you're not interested in creating that almost dependency between the client and yourself.
No. So we believe we're here to empower our clients with the confidence to make decisions for themselves. And sometimes that's actually, we don't give an answer, we give options. So here's the thing, you could sell this, or if you keep this property and do this and that and the other, then here's what life looks like. So I don't actually believe in many cases that there's one right solution, but it's about helping clients be armed with the information they need to make a good decision.
It's almost the flip side of, I think, building wealth in life opens a lot of options, opens a lot of doors for you. The flip side of that, though, is that there's no right answer. There's lots of grey and lots of nuance that you have to work through. And that can be really intimidating when all of a sudden you're now managing all of the money.
Yeah. So we're here as a guide to help clients understand their values and their goals and their drivers, and also the emotional ties and the history that they've had with money. So what behaviours have they had in the past that have not served them well, to help guide them on almost an emotional journey to make decisions as well. It's not all facts and figures.
I think anyone who is getting advice that is just facts and figures, you're only getting like a third of the picture.
Yes.
that journey that you're talking about, and I like that idea of being a guide through it, because it's not, well, here are the answers, it's here's the way, let's go together.
Mm.
That's not a quick process, though, I take it. That's not something you're expecting somebody to pick up immediately.
No, it's not a quick process. And we work with clients for the long term, because sometimes there's immediate decisions that you need to make, and there are some decisions that you need to park until you've got more clarity around goals. Because, you know, a lot of the times we're asking clients to come up with goals, but you know, this particular type of client who have, you know, they've had in their mind what their life was going to look like with their partner and their children or their families. They've probably had a sense of where they were going, but everything's now been turned on its head and they have to forge a new path. But that clarity isn't coming overnight. You know, they would need to rediscover who they are as individuals and, you know, what roles that they need to now play in the world. And so that's going to take a while for them to get clarity over where they're heading as well. And so sometimes we have to give that initial piece of advice to say, well, like, let's make the decisions that we need to make today. What are the things that we need to do today? And then it's this sort of ongoing journey of, as life continues to evolve and you start to, you know, rediscover who you are and what you want, then we need to start planning again. It's very much an ongoing iteration of advice.
I think there's a lot of value in just knowing which decisions should be made when. Yep. That's a really valuable role of an advisor, and a financial advisor ideally, but really any professional that can help you with that aspect of it. Just don't make any irreversible decisions and tread carefully, because one of the questions I'm sure you get quite a lot is people will come to you with a financial picture and say, oh, what do you think I should do? And the answer for me, I imagine to say, is always, well, what do you want to, where are you going? Like, where do you actually want to get to? I don't know what you should do based on this.
Yes, 100%.
How hard is it, though, to get people or help people start looking at destinations in that bereavement process? I mean, you mentioned it take some time. I imagine a lot of it is patience and helping people just sit tight for a bit. Yeah,
I think those first couple of years is really actually about taking stock and getting strength back. And then the long-term planning is really likely to come after that. But I don't think it's in those first 2 years.
Yeah. And
I'm not sure what your thoughts were. Like, we don't, it's not, you know, I wouldn't say we work with lots and lots of bereaving widows, but what's your take on that?
I would completely agree. I think there's those red light decisions you have to make now. There's the amber ones you can park, and the green ones are when we put it coming out of the tunnel. You're stepping into the light with a bit of recovery. And that's a few years down the track. That's not a rushed thing. And I think one of the elements that sort of one of the bigger financial or emotional elements that we've come across is, we've kind of touched on it already, but people feeling worried they're going to be treated like an idiot for not knowing things. What are some ways do you think that we can work better to make sure that there's not a feeling that people get left with after they've spoken to an advisor?
I don't know what other people do, but I think from my perspective, it's just reassuring them that there are no dumb questions, and that we meet people at varying different levels of knowledge, and then they're coming to us because we're in a position of knowledge and we're not expecting them to have the same level of, you know, understanding as ourselves, nor do we compare them with other clients. It's very much about understanding, how do we serve them best? You know, the same way we work with clients differently with different communication styles and different needs. And so, you know, I even looked at one of my Google reviews, and the wife in the relationship thanked me for communicating with her in her needs in the way that, you know, she likes things explained very simply, whereas her husband loves all of the data. So just being able to accommodate the individual that's in front of you and making sure that you're able to communicate within the style that's going to work for them. So we use lots of graphics as an example, and lots of pictures and diagrams, and explain things conceptually. But when you've got the client that's, you know, the engineer, or we make sure there's those spreadsheets that back up all the data. You know, it's
but much. But you don't open with the spreadsheets; they don't come first.
No. It's making sure that we've always got the information to back up the questions that the client's going to come to us with. But in that first meeting, probably just the reassurance that they're not expected to know anything, and we want them to come to us with the questions. We don't want them leaving a meeting still wondering, so we're very much encouraging questions.
Which I think is a really good flag of a good advisor, be a financial advisor, any area, but somebody who doesn't make you feel like an idiot, that you can communicate with and that you can feel comfortable asking it what you may think is a silly question. If that's not an experience you're having with your current advisors, lawyer, accountant, however it is, I would be asking questions, because I think, to your point, Kearsten, like, this is an ongoing iteration of your financial life. You shouldn't be dreading walking into that person's office twice a year to have a conversation where you get patronized and made to feel like an idiot.
No.
So find people that you really like to work with and that you really trust. Expanding on this concept of uncertainty that people are facing in those first, let's call it 2 to 3 years after losing someone, there are some entities that all bring different complexities to people's financial circumstances. And I know you do a lot of work with complex financial situations.
Yep.
So what are some entities that, if you've had a client come in that, they've just lost their partner and they're asking what to do, what are some entities that make sort of your antenna prick up a little bit, and some more work or some more detail is going to be required?
Well, certain things, like it's understanding the complexity of their financial situation, but also the financial literacy of the person that's in front of you. And if it may have been that if the husband was being the money manager, and perhaps they had a good level of financial literacy and were quite happy with the level of complexity of self-managed super funds or trusts and companies and various different share trading strategies or whatever it is that they've done, that may no longer suit the individual that's in front of you. And so I think it's important to understand whether they've got the capacity to continue to manage the assets in the structure that they're in, because a lot of responsibility comes with managing things like a self-managed super fund, and it can be very costly if you get it wrong. So that would be one of those things where you just want to make sure that what they're left with is right. So self-managed super fund being one of them. You can go into many different types of assets that might be held within that, and whether that's right for them or not. Family trusts, for example, you need to understand why that trust was there in existence. Was it there for asset protection purposes or tax? And is it still actually doing the job? Is it still adding value to them? Or is it just adding complexity and accounting costs to continue to run it? There might be businesses, as an example. They may have had a small business and then deciding whether to retain the business, sell it, or wind it up. And
that's a heavy emotional decision often as well, because that was very much their partner's identity frequently with their business.
Yeah. Hopefully they had a good financial planner working with them. And they already had exit plans for these businesses.
I'm trying to think of how many small businesses have a documented exit strategy, but they all should. If anybody's listening, you should have that in your business. So I've inherited this situation, and I'm not familiar with the financial position. Who should I be talking to work out kind of the utility or the usefulness of some of these different entities?
Yeah. So there's actually you would need a team of advisors, in my view. So financial planners should be working with your accountants and lawyers, because we all have a different role to play. So, the lawyers understand the structures and how to, what they were there for and what they can do and what are the rules of the entities that are established. An accountant's going to give you the sort of the tax side of things. So if you wind up this trust, here's what's going to happen with the money, and here's, all the different things that you need to consider. And the financial planner that can have this sort of overlay over all of the entities and bring in the life goals and the understanding of the client and the client's needs. So I really see financial planners as being the right person to be the project manager of all of those professionals. And that's why we work a lot with our clients, accountants and solicitors, to make sure that we're all singing to the same hymn book. We're all trying to achieve the same objectives. Tax is one thing, but there's a big overlay of life and goals and decision making. And, we talked about all the other areas that help clients make decisions that aren't actually about numbers. And that's where I think the financial planner comes in to help bring all of the professionals together.
I completely agree. Because of that broader perspective we take, I think, like lawyers and accountants are marvelous at the technical aspects of what they do, and some of them are very good at the personal aspects. But to the point earlier that there's no right decision really, without knowing what your actual personal context is, then the accountant or the lawyer can't really deliver the best technical value, because they might deliver a left-handed solution when really you want to head right. And that's where the advisor, I think the financial planner, can step in and really plug that gap. So I'm very glad to hear you echo that. Well, I'm going to skirt up against the line of advice here. So one thing we should make very clear here is that nothing Kearsten and I are talking about is actual financial advice. I don't take any actions based on what we're talking about. But I do want to just touch on a few of the big decisions that might come up with some of the entities that people inherit. So we've talked about self-managed super funds, fairly complex beasts, can be really useful, can be really quite dangerous as well. Somebody's inherited a self-managed super fund. What should sort of their first 3 or 4 big decisions be, do you think?
Well, with superannuation in general, if there's a member benefit, maybe if we ignore self-managed super for a quick second and I take a step back into just superland, with superannuation, when there's a deceased person, the money has to leave the super environment. Like, it can't remain in their accumulation account anymore. And so the beneficiary of that super fund has to make then a decision on what they want to do. And this gets into a very complex area of law, because it depends on who the beneficiary is, what age they are, and all sorts of things, to actually understand what their options are in terms of taking the money. But if we just say the spouse for the moment, just for simplicity's sake, a spouse could choose to actually take the deceased husband or wife's money as a lump sum, or they can choose to take a death benefit pension. And each of them have pros and cons, and it ultimately is going to come back to, well, what money do you need where? Is there debts that need to be repaid and all sorts of things? So there is no one right answer as to which way is the best way to go. It's always dependent on the individual and their circumstances. But there certainly are tax benefits in taking a death benefit pension, in the sense that money can continue to pay an income stream and be invested in a tax-free environment. But again, it comes back to the individual, their age, as to how that's actually going to be taxed for them when they're receiving income streams. It's a very complex area of advice where I don't like that, so many Australians are having to make these decisions alone without seeking advice, because you can get it wrong.
And even if you've made that decision in advance as part of your estate planning process, that might have been 5, 10, 15 years ago. Things change. It can still be very confronting to make that decision under a time pressure. So that's where good advice, I think, can make a huge difference.
And just throwing in self-managed super fund just adds in an extra layer of complexity, because you are the trustee of that fund. And so you are ultimately the one that's responsible for being aware of the tax rules, the limitations, the decision making around what you can and can't do and how you can pay it. You have to be aware of what the trust deed says and what the rules are of the deed. So that just throws in just a whole nother level of complexity, is when you're actually dealing with the self-managed super fund and estate planning.
And I think looping back to that idea of the advisor sort of patting someone on the head saying, oh, no, it'll be fine. I think that's been a very common approach to self-managed super funds historically, and it's not really it's not adequate anymore. I think the individuals now, you're really responsible. You really need to be doing a lot of the work.
Yes. And there's no backup plan. There's no one you can go after. There's no one you can say, well, it was his fault. It's like, no, you're responsible, actually.
Yeah. It's all on you.
It's all on you.
I'll plow ahead before my bias sort of kicks in about self-managed super funds. Family trusts. Are there any kind of time critical points that people need to consider if a family trust is part of the estate?
Well, a family trust isn't actually an estate asset. So it doesn't get dealt with as part of your will. It really then becomes what do you want to do with the assets? Because it is sort of standalone, you need to understand who then takes control of the trust, who's managing the trust, who's, do you have to actually replace the corporate trustees, director and shareholders? So there's a little bit of complexity around that sort of management of it. What about yourself? What do you think extra complexities come in with trusts that you've seen and experienced?
I think it's a really ripe area for where that gulf between literacy and complexity really can clash. And that's where people, I think, are leaning a lot on the advices they're inherited. And if they're giving good advice and clear advice, it's a fantastic outcome. But if they're not, and if they're communicating to the widow the way they communicated to the deceased, there can be a real problem, because family trusts are complicated. Like you need to feel confident to ask silly questions about family trusts, because inherently it's a very silly structure. It's got a lot of silly terms and a lot of silly stuff that happens that doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense. So you need to be comfortable asking silly questions. That's probably my biggest thing, is that gap between literacy and complexity. But they can be quite a good vehicle. They can work really well. But yeah, I think it's an area where you really want quality advice that you're comfortable with.
I also think testamentary trusts are something that you really need to understand as well. So if a testamentary trust has been written into the will, making the decision, you typically, depending how it's written, should have the choice as to whether you operate the trust or make sure it goes into existence or not, and try and simplify things. But really understanding the benefits that can be added through a testamentary trust is probably important in that decision-making process. Again, another good reason to get advice. So a testamentary trust can be very tax effective, because if you've got grandchildren or children that are minors, that you've basically got all of these extra people that you can share your taxable income with at adult marginal tax rates, which ordinarily would not happen unless it was through a testamentary trust. So there's lots of tax advantages, even asset protection advantages. So if you wanted to keep the assets within your bloodline so that it passed from you then onto your children and your children's children, those trusts can help protect those things, particularly against future marriages, or bankruptcy or other litigation issues. So there's a lot of advantages to testamentary trust, but again, it's an area of complexity that requires advice. And a good financial planner that's going to actually make you understand what you've got.
Because they are incredibly complex. We actually have one of the episodes of the podcast, we have a testamentary trust specialist joining us to walk through the pros and cons of one. But also because everything I can find online, just sort of searching around as a layperson, they talk about setting them up and how good they can be, but the actual mechanics of running it day to day, that was something that you can't see a lot online about. So Claire Stollery, an estate lawyer, will be joining us to walk through that, because they are a phenomenal vehicle. If you're listening to this, you've probably inherited one, but there's a lot of complexity there that we will be unpacking, but they can be great. Okay, cool. We could keep talking about entities all day. So I might move on to the second area that I wanted to cover off for people going through this. And this is, I know, an area that you deliver a lot through your practice, and it's a really strong focus. And it's this idea of what financial confidence actually looks like. So I wanted to start by unpacking the people that we're working with in this scenario are moving towards financial confidence. They're not there yet. They're on that journey that you flagged. But for the people that you work with that you would say are financially confident, what are some of the things that they have in their life that kind of underpin that confidence?
Yeah. I think of what financial confidence looks like, and it's the clients that have actually been through the financial planning process and are out the other side of it are feeling financially confident because of the outcomes of the steps that we go through. They now, they know their position. They understand where everything is. This is what I have. This is what I owe. This is what I own. This is what I earn. This is what I spend. If I die, this is what happens with my money. If I was sick or injured, this is the insurances that are going to cover me. They have clarity over where they are today. They've been through the goal setting and the values discussion process. So they know where they're heading. They understand they've had a really good discovery session where they now better understand themselves and, potentially their partners if they're in there together. They've discovered what's important to them about life and the decisions that they're going to make. And they've gotten clear on where they're heading and what they're trying to achieve. So they know where they are and they know where they're going. They've then got the strategy. So they say we've worked with them to figure out, well, what steps do you need to take to make sure that we're working towards achieving those objectives? So they've got strategy around where they're making super contributions, debt reduction, cash flow management plans. So they've got control over the income, the expenditure. They've got, they know where their surplus cash flow is going and how it's going to grow wealth for them. All of those different aspects. So they've got the strategy, and then they've got the actual know-how, the steps to implement. To achieve that strategy, I'm going to be buying this share or investing in this super fund, and my money is being invested this way because I'm this type of investor. So, I'm trying to simplify things, but it's such a big process to go through. But ultimately, it's making sure that they understand where they are, where they're going, how they're going to get there, and exactly what they need to do to make those things come together. And at the end of all of that, just confidence falls off the back of it. As long as throughout all of it, they've been engaged, the advice has been tailored to them. They feel like they understand the advice and the steps and the things that they're being told to do, and they feel confident that it's right for them. If they've worked with an advisor that has just taken that just trust me approach and just said, you're going to do this, 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 and this without telling them why, then they're not going to feel confident. They're just going to maybe feel like they perhaps trust the person, hopefully.
Yeah. It's not empowering.
But it's not empowering. It doesn't give the same level of confidence and I think, the self-confidence of knowing that you're making good decisions.
And I think it's important. You will not work with an advisor forever. You will work with them for a period of time whereby they are providing you with value and guidance that you need. At the end of that, if you have been empowered properly, you can then drive that process forward with those skills and abilities that you've learned. If you've not been empowered, then you'll be abandoned. And that's a horrible feeling and can leave you kind of vulnerable to some really shonky activities that are out there. I want to go back to one of the notes you made in there, that they know where their surplus cash flow is going and they know how it's going to help them build their wealth. Now, I would argue, and I think we would agree, they need to have that goals conversation and values conversation. Let me backtrack. Building wealth for the sake of building wealth is not going to contribute to confidence. In my experience, those people are never comfortable and they're never secure about money. Whereas if you have somebody who's got less money or is earning less, but they're clear on where they are, where they're going, that is a path to real confidence, I would suggest.
Yeah. So everything we tell our clients to do has a purpose. We are making this contribution or this repayment to your debt because it will have you debt-free by age 50. If we put this level of super contribution in, then we anticipate we're going to tick off your goal of being able to retire at age 60. If we put this money into this investment bond and continue to add this much every month, you will be able to give your children the gift of a $50,000 house deposit by age 25. So everything that we do is very much strategic in nature and has a purpose. And so the clients understand that this decision should equal this outcome.
It has to be grounded in those goals, objectives, and values that they've already expanded on. Which, again, if you're only talking to a technically minded advisor, without that context, your decisions, there is no good decision then. There's no way of knowing if it's been the right one or the wrong one. Now, this is kind of a live thought, so it may or may not make sense. But the idea that kind of you've got all these options now, the advice that we give, as you say, has a very clear destination. It's got a very clear grounding. But when somebody's got multiple options in front of them and there is no really good one, like it has to be driven to an extent by them. My answer is yes to this question, but do you find it challenging then to help guide them through that process and leave them feeling more confident? Sometimes they can feel more insecure. I'm not sure if I've explained it very well.
As in when there's too many options?
Yeah. Because our advice is very definitive ultimately.
Yes.
But you're dealing with situations that may be ambiguous or there's a lot of nuance or grey.
Yeah. And I think that's another reason why we need to continue to come back to things, because you may not actually have a clear path today. But here are some thoughts that you need to start thinking about so that we can get to a point of making a decision in the future. So Where there are too many options, I think that's oftentimes we have to bring it back to the emotional state as well. So that's why when we're engaging with new clients, we start with values as the starting point. So we talk to them about how they want to live their life. What emotional state do they want to be in? So is it about, and we go through a long list and help them draw out what their values are, and then we get them to prioritize them. So is it about nurture, having more time to spend with their children and build connection with their loved ones? Is it about mastery? Do they really want to throw themselves into their career and, develop themselves and spend every hour God gave to build this vision of themselves as a leader in business? Is it that they want to live in a place that they love? Or is it about having adventure or balance in life? So all of these values are discussions that we have with clients before we do goal setting, because goal setting often falls off the back of those values discussions. And sometimes we have to change the goals because they don't align with the values.
And
so
if there's no alignment there's a real tension and a clash. Sorry to interrupt, but do you find a lot of people have had those conversations about values before?
Never.
Question, but yes.
Yes, no, never. So I think that's one of the things that not too many financial advisors are doing yet. But I'd love to go out there and spruik and say everyone should be having these conversations, because the value of the goal setting discussion is so much stronger, having understood the drivers behind where the clients want to be. You see a lot of goals discussions where you just sit down with a blank piece of paper and you say, okay, so what do you want in 3 years? I want a new car. Sure, sounds great. Let's renovate the home and, various, travel, all of this stuff.
Quantifiable,
lots
smart
of
goals.
things. Let's get stuff and put smart goals around them. And all of that is really important. But is what they're giving you just to appease you because you're asking questions, or is that actually something that's really, truly of value to them? Yeah. And so we've had some clients where, they'd come to us with the goal of they wanted the dream home, and it was going to require them to, take out millions in debt. And yes, it's achievable. But your value is around balance, and you want choice to cut back work at a particular point so that you can spend more time with your family, or you want to, what are the other things? Travel and adventure, or you want to try a new career at some point in time, and you don't want to be tied to a job, and all these sorts of conversations that come out of values. And then you say, okay, you can have your dream home. It'll be beautiful, stunning. You'll feel really proud of yourself when you have people come and visit. But you will be working till you're 65. You will be working full time. You must continue to earn that salary that you're earning today, and all of these other things that do not align with the values that you've discussed. And so, how important is
it's
that
just
goal
a statement
to you?
Of fact. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. So you can have it. So if I take this back to where you first asked about choices, there's so many choices. How do you give clarity and confidence? I think it comes back to making sure that the choices that they have align with what's really important to them and their values.
Yeah, I think it's critical, or else, how are they going to? How do you make decisions then? You make them based on what? Peer pressure, peer expectations.
Because my mate has a boat.
Boats and horses. Just stay away from boats and horses. That, you know what? I'm going to say that
that
is financial advice.
But that might tick off one of their values. If they want to have more time with their friends and social and la 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 la.
True.
Then actually a boat might be a really good financial decision for them in achieving their life
Absolutely.
goals.
That's
So,
100%.
no judgment.
I mean, a better financial decision is to make friends with people with a boat. Do that and then go to their boat. Their horse.
And I think we should point out that there actually is a judgment of clients around their values. Everyone that sits in front of us is unique and has different drivers. They've all had different life experience. They've seen their parents manage money in different ways. Some people have seen struggle. Some people have seen luxury. Everyone comes to us with a different view.
And I would say that's the best part of the job.
Yeah, is that everyone is different. And ultimately, our goal is to help our clients live their best life, not what we think their best life should be.
Yes. And I think, again, harking back to our enemy advisor or our villain advisor, there's a lot of that imposition of what they think a life should look like. Whereas
Yes.
good advice is very much receptive to what you're saying.
Yes.
And I think one of the emotional challenges that people can experience during the bereavement process is trying to. There's two parts. Either they spend a lot of time and energy trying to comply with what they presume the deceased would have wanted for them, or they're really struggling with guilt around almost rebelling against what the life that they had sort of quasi-agreed to live. So their life is maybe taking a left-hand turn because that involves, you may lose friends, you may conflict with family, you may have asset. There's a strong feeling of almost betraying their legacy. But to Kirsten's point, that if you have had that realization on a really solid value foundation, and then you expanded from there, then you should feel confident making those really big decisions. Because that legacy piece can be.
What I don't want, I think the thing we need to warn people against is indecision or sitting in their anxiety over money. And I've seen it done two different ways where they just chose non-action. So basically everything's just gone to cash and I'm just going to put in the bank account, because bank accounts I know and understand, but that's it. And that's just a real quick way to lose your money, is just being eroded by inflation. So doing nothing is not actually a very good answer. It's short-term, probably a safeguarding mechanism, but long-term not going to be right for you. The next thing is actually to get rid of the thing that's causing the anxiety by spending it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen it before, but, for someone perhaps that has been in a relationship where they never really had a lot of money, but they had an income coming through, the husband was generating income. So life was still comfortable, but they didn't ever have to make financial decisions because there wasn't money. And all of a sudden life insurances and super funds pay out and there's all of this money in the bank account that they may have to make decisions about. And that causes so much anxiety that the easiest thing that they could do was to spend it.
Yep.
And
it's not uncommon. And particularly when there's grief attached to the money. Like for a lot of people who've inherited a life insurance balance because their husband had a horrible illness and was awful. That money causes pain and they want to get rid of the pain. So they spend it and they buy. And there's always a justification behind it, which I understand. But
a lot of gifting, a lot of generosity. Wanting to help other people with the money, doing things that make them feel good about the money. But at the end of the day, once it's all gone, creates just a whole new level of anxiety because now there's nothing.
And I think that aspect of mindset around money is a really key thing to explore before you make any big decisions that can be delayed. So I would encourage people to find an advisor like Kearsten and have a chat with and explore what it can mean. Because you don't want to make decisions that you're going to regret in 5 years. It's better to sit with a bit of discomfort for a year or two than to have huge regrets afterwards. And it's such a big topic, that idea of inaction causing problems as well, or the wrong action. And I think inaction loses people a lot more money than we ever hear about because it erodes over time. It also keeps the anxiety around for longer, I think.
Yes.
Because if it's sitting in the bank account for 5 years, every time you're open, it's 5 years down the track.
So much of anxiety actually sits right before the decision. And then once the decision's made, then the anxiety just dissipates.
Yeah, once you've taken action. And I think it is important to flag there that, we've joked around a bit, but there is no right decision. There's no 100% perfect decision. There are just decisions. And if you make enough of them on the right foundation and for the right reasons, you'll head in the right direction.
Correct.
Brings us around to the sort of the third area around financial confidence I wanted to talk about. And this is probably talking about more of the mechanics. Like what are some of the specific things that people would have that we see financially confident people having? But starting off with sort of what are some of the concrete actions people can take? So let's start with maybe people's cash flow. What are some...
For every client that is willing to engage with us on cash flow, because not everyone is... Not everyone wants us to delve that deep, but for most of our clients, we have put in place cash flow management plans for them. And that's where there's structure around the banking even. So the money that comes in, funnel all of the various income sources through one main bank account hub. And then we've set up 3 different transaction accounts for different purposes. So like bills, So all your fixed expenses get paid out of this account, all your discretionary expenses get paid out of this account. You might have an account for the one-day expenses, like you need a new car tires or a big medical bill pops up and those sorts of things. And then that intentionality around goals. So there's a bank account for travel. So if travel's really important to you, you've literally every week put a set amount of money into that account so that you guilt-free go and enjoy that money. So just these cash flow management plans that we tailor to the individual to help them have that clarity over their spending and feel good about it and know that they're on track, because if there's money in the bank account, it's for spending.
I love, I mean, you're not using the word budget, I notice, really deliberately, I imagine, because budgets have a negative connotation.
Yeah.
And budgets mean deprivation and limitation, whereas yours is more intentional.
Empowerment.
Yeah. And empowerment.
Yeah. So if we set up money for the fun stuff, there's got to be bank accounts for the enjoyable things, but there's also bank accounts for the stuff that you need in life. So it's intentional spending is what we want clients to make. And so a lot of the time clients will come to us, all of the money comes into one bank account, and all of it helps clients understand whether they're on track or not purely by living within that bucket of money for a week. And we tell them it's only ever a week at a time. So you just got to make it till Monday. That amount of money just has to make it till Monday. So when you get to the weekend and you go, oh, I got $500 to get me through to Monday, what are we going to do? Let's go to dinner. La, 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 la. It's, you
can do it with intention.
Intentional spending.
So I think that's certainly, completely agree. Fundamental number one for feeling more confident around your money is having intention and clarity around your expenditure and your income, and having a really deliberate plan in place, not having a one big pot account like you're talking about where money flushes in, flushes out, and whatever's left over you use. I think another item that I'd always like, I think brings some confidence to people, particularly later in life when they're approaching sort of 60, 65, is knowing how much money they've got, knowing where it is, and knowing how long it's likely to last based on some assumptions, which is bread and butter stuff for us. I have X dollars in my super fund. How long is that actually going to last me for?
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest questions that people come to us is, do I have enough? Like this, what's the dollar figure? Like, what can I retire on? How much do I need? But then year after year throughout retirement, having the peace of mind of we're continually checking in and saying, I've still got enough. I've still got enough. I can spend this much this year and I've still got enough.
I think there's a real microcosm of that for people going through bereavement as well, where it's, can I afford my life for the next 18 months? I can't have my life change drastically on top of everything else, my budget. So a lot of our work in that first 2 years is, here's the pot of money. This will keep you funded. This will keep you in the lifestyle you're used to while we work on those yellow and red light decisions over time. So making sure there's always enough money there for people, I think brings a lot of confidence to actually own and where it all is.
That snapshot in time. What do I owe? What do I own? Where is my income coming from? Just having clarity over where it all is. And like most clients still come to us and really not having a lot of clarity over, never really saw it on a page, never actually saw it all come together. They know they've got lots of bits and pieces, but how much does that actually all add up to?
And what function
and is it enough? And is it good for where they're at? Like
relative to peers, there's always a do you use a lot of mind maps? I'm using them quite a lot at the moment to try to illustrate stuff.
Yeah, so we do what we call concept diagrams. So when we talk through clients' position, it's actually pictures. So little people and little houses and little cars and little share pictures and super funds. So everything that we put in terms of helping them understand their position is actually in a picture.
Yeah, that's good.
And we'll have a picture for insurances, a picture explaining their estate planning, a picture for their cash flow. So all of that, where all the sources of income and expenses are going, it's all just in a diagram. I think
it's so powerful,
by nature,
I think really useful. Yeah, it helps.
We're very visual people.
Yeah.
Well, I am.
I'm the same. And even when we've brought on a new client, like you take your notes and you record your meeting, that my first action I do outside the meeting is just sketch it all out so I can actually work out how it all flows and how it all works.
Yes.
And I think to your point, no one has that. People don't get that as part of the process, and it's very likely that their late partner didn't have that. They may have had it in their mind, but they never saw it actually on paper. So that can be quite
Yeah.
useful, I think. I think, I'm biased here, so I'll put it out there, but I think a really good team of advisors.
Well, depends on their situation. So you might want, ideally a financial advisor is going to help you sort of bring it all together. I think they're going to be the best suited to help you make those life decisions that align with your goals. And they also have a very good skill set that's sort of across. They're like your GP. They're across all aspects of your financial life, from insurances to debt to taxes and super. So I think financial planning is really important. Accounting, solicitors, particularly in dealing with the sort of estate administration. They might need a mortgage broker if there's mortgages that need to be refinanced or work that needs to be done. Potentially an insurance specialist if they're working through insurance claims and things. They're the sort of ones that come to mind.
Yeah, I completely agree. Probably the one addition I would make is that those different advisors are specialised in the area you need them to be. So, yes. Not to denigrate them, but your suburban solicitor who does kind of everything from family law, conveyancing, wills, if you have even the slightest bit of complexity in your estate arrangements, they're probably not going to be ideal. You probably want to engage a specialist.
100%. Self-managed super fund is a completely unique and specialised area that you want to be working with a specialist in that field. 100%.
I think it makes everything a lot easier and just avoid some of the traps that can pop up.
Yeah.
But yeah, a finance broker, mortgage broker is a really good one as well, because there will likely to be debt that needs to be worked out.
Yeah.
It's always better to deal with them than the bank, I think.
Yeah.
The
might be a little friendlier.
Might answer their phone. Apparently I'm just on a mission to avoid all sponsorship of anything I ever do. The final thing I have on my list of kind of things that people would feel confident about is having that comfort to ask silly questions. I think that's a really big part of having a professional relationship. Are there any sort of big ticks or checklist items you'd want you think people should have?
I would just like asking questions, silly questions, good questions. And to me, they're all good questions because it means you don't know the answer. So there aren't any silly questions, because if you don't know it, then it's a great question.
Yeah, you're right. Because if you don't know it and you don't ask it, you'll never know it.
Yeah, the silly question is the one that doesn't get asked. Educate yourself, I think, is the most empowering thing that you can do if you're trying to build confidence, is educating yourself around the things that you do not feel confident about.
Yeah.
And that might be self-education, or it might be working with an advisor that's going to very much focus on helping you understand. I think community is also really important. So connecting yourself with other people that are in perhaps a similar situation, or maybe even getting involved in a community that are all about finance or talking money problems for people like yourselves. So potentially a safe space to also ask you questions, or even ask, because some people might even not know where to start to look for a financial advisor. So a community that you can ask, well, who's worked for you? Yes.
Yeah.
Because again, to your point earlier, not every financial advisor, they might all be great, but not suited to you and your individual needs and what you're trying to achieve. So we certainly occasionally say no to clients because we don't tick the box of what the client's looking for. Like, there's certain things that we just don't focus our energy on because we don't believe it adds value. But if that's something that's going to be really important to the client, then you go, well, actually, you probably would be better suited to this person.
And advice as well. I think we've all become a lot more accustomed, or maybe a lot more secure in what we can do, and know enough people to send people to the right fit.
There's so much inter-referrals between financial advisors. We respect one another. By knowing a lot of financial advisors and what they do well, we're then able to help clients land with the right financial advisor for them, because we don't want to work with people that aren't going to value what we do.
Oh, no, it's too much. Yeah, no, that's not a good relationship for anyone. Nobody enjoys that. No. I think that's, that community and having a good advisor on hand. But the community piece is one that I think is probably overlooked a little bit. Having people
It's
you can talk to about money and have that safe space to discuss things.
Yep, good friendship groups. You'll find, particularly in that sort of stage of bereavement, that people actually genuinely want to help, but they probably don't know how to help, and so you just end up with a whole bunch of frozen meals. But maybe you can ask your friend to, call the golf club and let them know that such and such isn't with you anymore, or there's probably lots of different ways that you can ask for help, and people genuinely will want to be there to support. They just wouldn't know where to start.
And I think that admin and asking for help and that interaction, it's so awful when you're going through it. But to your point, sort of that journey of empowerment, not like the golf club and stuff like that, but every little bit of work and research and breadcrumb you can chase down in 3, 5, 10 years, it's going to contribute to that level of confidence you have in your financial position. And
yes,
it's going to make it easy for you to say no to things. That's a really underrated skill when it comes to money. But it's also going to make you feel a lot more confident saying yes to things, which is also, it's all about building those skills. It is an iterative process. We don't expect people to walk out of the meetings with us saying, yep, I understood everything they ever said. That was fantastic. We want to hear the questions afterwards as you're driving home going, what the hell's a contribution? What's he talking about? We want you to bring that up. But circling around to sort of the final point I wanted to visit in today's podcast is just, what are some questions that you think people should be asking a financial advisor, kind of, or to find a financial advisor, or where to start?
Oh, that's tough. Because ultimately, because I'm going to throw to you too, it's going to be different depending on each individual and what they want from an advisor. Do they actually want to sit down and have the advisor talk them through portfolio performance every 3 months? And if not, then maybe is that your selling point? When the financial advisor is putting forward the value that they add, it's like, oh, we send you this many newsletters and we sit down and take you through the performance history of our portfolio every 3 months, and we spend a lot of time in the rearview mirror looking at what happened in the past. Well, that's not something we sell. But I think it's really probably getting a little bit of clarity over what you want from a financial planning relationship, and asking questions about how they work with their clients and what value do they add. And does that then align with them? So when I set up the business, I thought about, what are the things, if I was looking for an advisor, what would I be wanting? So independence is like, I've been 20 years independent. So, you and I are already sold on what that means. But basically I want to know 100% that whatever that advisor's recommending is because it's in my best interest, not because it makes their life easier, or they're getting for some reason they're using a particular strategy that's not for me, in my interests. I have a particular philosophy, and I think you're a little bit the same when we were talking earlier about wanting to empower clients to be in a position where they don't need you.
Yeah.
And so when a client comes on, the recommendations we give are so that they're in a position where they can manage things themselves without us. So we philosophically do not want to tie ourselves to a client, where that if they leave us or are no longer getting advice from us, they then have to sell all of their investments and leave their super fund because actually you need an advisor to be attached to operate it.
Absolutely.
So probably understanding from your advisor, if I come to you and you put me in a particular super fund, if I don't work with you again in the future, am I going to have to leave that thing that you want to put me in? What else have you got?
I think finding out if they have experience with your current or particular situation. So have they had experience helping widows navigate bereavement? Have they had experience with self-managed super funds, family trusts, dealing with professional advisors in a more collaborative way? Just have they had that experience? And it's not necessarily a knock if they haven't, but you probably want somebody who's been along this path before if they're guiding you along as a guide through that.
Yeah.
So I think, what experience do you have in this space? I'm on my independent soapbox. So it'd be, how do you get paid? I think that's a big one. I love when people ask me that. They're always a little bit tentative and a little bit nervous. I'm like, no, you pay me. You pay me for all my work, and that's everything that happens. So there's no connection there. I think that's a big one. It's less so now that there's less commissions floating around, but I think you should know. I think this isn't a common one, but what do you do if things go wrong? Who do I complain to? Who can I escalate to? And it's probably a little bit of an issue for me because I'm a very small business. Like, I am the complaints manager, but I'm also the advisor.
You tell me. If you're not happy with me, tell me.
Tell me. Tell me. We need to resolve it. And if you're not happy, then it's something that we need to fix. But I think that's probably the big ones for me. Do they have experience, and what do we do if it goes wrong?
Yep. And what is your service offering? And if, things change in the future, can I still come to you and, will we continue to make changes? Or and that's another thing, is like, do you just see me on the 1st of October because I'm here on the 1st of October? Like, are you not going to think about me again for another 12 months? Or is this an ongoing sort of relationship where we can continue to remain in communication and I can ask questions as life changes?
Yeah. And I think the good corollary of that is your values discussion, because through that process, and there's a professional blurring here, but you get to really know people and you really start to care, and you build a relationship with people. So I would guarantee that you're not just thinking of that client on the 30th of September. You're thinking about them periodically through the year.
Yes. And so we intentionally don't charge hourly rates, as an example, because we don't want to disincentivize people or make them feel like, oh, no, if I call Kearsten, it's going to cost me X amount of dollars for this silly question that I've got. So we do fixed fees for a 12-month period. So we encourage clients to use us for the 12 months that we engage every year, so that we continue to make sure we're adding value. But it's a fixed fee. So give us a call when you have a question. It's not going to cost you any extra. We actually want clients to tell us before they make financial decisions. When you're thinking, I might sell a property, call me.
I had somebody call me the other day on the day of the auction, and they were selling off half their farm, and I had no idea this was happening. And it was the day of the auction. I was like, oh Jesus, okay, I guess. Yeah. So please don't do that. Make sure you speak to your advisor proactively. You don't want to shave years off your advisor's life. No. So I think, questions to ask an advisor, definitely, what kind of relationship do you think we would have? How are you paid? Can I call you when I have questions? Like, are you only going to think of me on that particular renewal date? Have you worked with people like me in the past? What experience do you have? How are you paid? Like, these are, I think,
qualifications, education, I think, is important. It's certainly important to me, but again, it comes back to experience and education. How long have you been doing this?
When I was in my 20s, experience was something I thought was a bit overrated, but now that I've got lots of grey hair, it's very much well worth it.
Yep.
It's good to have. You want people that have seen it before. So I think we've covered everything I was hoping to chat about today. Was there anything sort of last areas you wanted to touch?
I think just harping back to, there are no silly questions. It's such an important thing in building financial confidence, to feel like you're getting the answers to the things that are keeping you awake at night. So just encouraging people to be seeking advice from whatever professional is going to help achieve, that financial clarity that they need. Just, you don't have to do it alone.
No. And if you feel like you are, even though you're getting advice, find other advisors. Because,
It shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't be like that.
Easiest way would be to just jump on our website. So www.addihouse.com.au. So Addi, A-D-D-I, house.com.au. And we've got a book a call link on our website, and they can just schedule in a free introductory chat to just jump on a call with me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for listening. Any questions, queries, complaints, criticisms, flick them through either on the Facebook page or email me at jordan@planningsolo.com.au. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Life, Loss and Legacy. We'll speak to you next time.
Thank you.